This is the Amblev River that runs through Stavelot. Now, on the morning of the 18th, Piper attacked onto this bridge. Piper had mobile armor here on both sides of the bridge coming down from the north that had time a few hours before then to zero the whole location in. So he could actually throw shells down here. This armoured battery, who was supporting the engineers, found themselves having to pull back away from the bridge, and they actually had to allow Piper onto the bridge at that time.
Piper leaves behind a small force of SS troopers to protect his rear, and they quickly live up to their notorious reputation.
As Piper's pushing west, the troops behind him are basically running riot. They're going into houses, they're throwing hand grenades into cellars full of civilians, babies as young as 9 months old, pensioners in their 70s. They're doing just what they want, basically.
The Tiger Royal, or King Tiger, is a battlefield monster. It weighs 70 tons, more than twice as much as a Sherman, and is plated with armor that is in places 180 millimeters thick. Its long-barreled 88 millimeter main gun can penetrate even the heaviest Allied armor at ranges of over 3,000 meters, making the King Tiger the biggest and most powerful tank on the World War II battlefield.
This is one of Kampfgruppe Piper's Tigers. This is a King Tiger II. This was the warhorse of Kampfgruppe Piper's unit. After looking at a Sherman, and then you see this, then you see what a tank is. They were firing 25-pounder shells from close range into this Tiger. And we can see here where they've glanced off the front armor, which is around 186 millimeters thick. And this here is a shell that actually went in to this Tiger and exploded out. Wouldn't have stopped it at 25 yards. That's how powerful this thing is. It's sporting an 88 cannon. It's one of the best cannons the Germans had in the field. If you'd have been on the naughty end of this, you could forget it. Your war was over if you're hit by one of these things. We're in L'Église. This is one of Kampfgruppe Piper's Tigers. So here we have a testament to the power of a German tank in 1944. They didn't come bigger or better than this machine here. It was left in a field behind this schoolhouse here in L'Église, because L'Église was the place where Piper made his last stand. This is where the net tightened around him. By Christmas Eve, 1944, the game was more or less up for Kampfgruppe Piper. Piper abandons L'Église. He leaves all his armor behind. He leaves all the half-tracks, all the artillery, all the tanks, everything. And he goes out of this place on foot. He walks out of L'Église.
the Bulge was the last major Nazi offensive against the Allies in World War II and involved almost 1 million soldiers. The new book is called Voices of the Bulge, and documentary of the same name reveal untold stories from that battle with first-hand accounts from both American soldiers and German veterans, including SS officers, or soldiers, I should say, who talked to the authors after decades of silence. Joining us this morning are the authors and documentary makers Martin King and Michael Collins. Good morning to both of you.
Good morning.
Wow, 12 years of your blood, sweat, and tears into this book. Is the story now told, the complete story of the Battle of the Bulge?
It will never be told. Absolutely not, no. We're still uncovering stuff now today. But 12 years collectively we spent investigating stories and cross-referencing, and I've been working from Europe where I live, and Mike's been working here in the States. He's been down here a lot too. Where did you go down here, Mike?
Yeah, we went to the National Archives in College Park, just doing research, looking for just documentation of the different reports written out by each division during that battle. And when I would uncover things, I would send emails and make phone calls to Martin telling him what I found.
Oh, my phone bill was horrendous. Oh, dear me.
But well worth it. Well worth it, I'm sure.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
In the book, what I find just so incredible is what we said in that lead in there, because you talk to both sides. It is a complete look at what was going on with these oftentimes very young men. Tell us about talking to these men and the first-hand accounts that we'll read when we pick up Voices of the Bulge. I'll start with you, Mike.
Well, yeah, with the American veterans, it was some of them never had really spoken about their stories until either now or just the past few years.
You find that a lot, right? They don't speak. This generation often doesn't speak about it. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, this generation, they came back from war and they went back to their everyday life. They didn't really see it as something that they needed to dwell on. They saw this as their job and they came back. But many of them, some of them began to relive some of the horrors they saw. And you had to be mindful of this because you had many soldiers who lost many friends during this battle, and some of them became prisoners of war. And that can be very difficult when, as a historian, when you're interviewing someone, you have to be very mindful of what they went through. And that was very difficult.
What they went through. Martin, I'll ask you about the German soldiers, including the SS soldiers. I'm very surprised that they opened up at all and talked about this. Can you talk about it, sort of what this was like?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, the SS don't like being interviewed.
Yes.
And when you actually do get them to talk, it's usually quite sporadic. And the thing is with the SS is that when you actually get through to them, they're all in their late 80s, early 90s, and it's almost like a confessional now. They're saying, oh yeah, okay, let's come out, we'll tell you what happened. And that was absolutely phenomenal. I mean, some of these guys were absolutely remarkable. There were atrocities committed during the Battle of the Bulge, and Mike and I also wanted to get under the skin of these and find out who were the perpetrators, who did what, who was where, and we've actually been able to establish this now. And if I might put a postscript to that.
Indeed.
Thanks to this book, one woman in this book was knighted this year because of this book. The first black woman in Europe to receive a knighthood because she served with the US Army in the Battle of the Bulge. She was a Belgian woman from the Congo, and she volunteered to work with the 10th Armoured Division, and she was largely forgotten. She never talked about it after the war. And when we uncovered her story, we compiled a dossier, and we actually sent this dossier to the King of Belgium, and we said, come on, this woman's a hero. She deserves recognition. And so with his support, my wife and I attended the knighthood ceremony this year in June, and Augusta Chiwi was knighted, Lady Augusta Chiwi of Bastogne. Lump in the throat like a melon. You would not believe. That was absolutely incredible. She's only that big.
Yes.
But what a woman.
I saw her picture. She's a petite little thing.
Oh, she's gorgeous.
Right.
Absolutely. She's absolutely wonderful. Now, Stephen Ambrose, the man who wrote Band of Brothers, had made his passing reference to Anna from the Congo. And I came in on this. I said, Anna from the Congo? You know, I know she was there, but we didn't have any idea of what she'd done.
Right.
And when we actually uncovered the story of how this little tiny lady was dragging wounded GIs off the battlefield under fire, wearing an American uniform, a US Army uniform, we said, we've got to go further
Do
with
something
this.
for her.
Absolutely.
Michael, 600,000 U.S. troops involved in this. 81,000 Americans died over this period. Has now the story been told? Are our kids learning what they need to know about these great sacrifices?
You know, I don't really think so, in a way. History in schools are being shoved off. Everyone's talking about science, technology, engineering, which are fine, they're great, but if you don't know your history, you will repeat it, as they say. And I believe not only for the Battle of the Bulge, but World War II in general, what these great veterans did, both men and women, is almost incomprehensible. They lived through the Depression, they then had to go to war, and then they had to come home. And that's just very, especially for many of them who didn't speak, they went back to what they knew. And to get these stories out, I mean, you can never get the complete story.
Sure.
But we hope that this book will...
and DVD.
And
it's
DVD.
Involved.
Yeah.
It's
That's
included
right.
in the
Does
book.
have a DVD.
Companion documentary DVD.
Yes.
You've told the story in a way that we can all understand it. The first-person account is so fascinating.
Yes, thank you.
We have to end this interview here, but you all do have appearances, right?
Oh,
yes.
Tell her where
Yes,
we've been. Tell her
okay.
where we've been.
We've been to West Point.
Oh.
Yes.
We went to Siena College, my alma mater,
Yes.
up in
New York.
Albany. Also, we went to Fort Dix in New Jersey. We're going to be at the U.S. Naval Museum here in D.C. today at 11:30.
Thanks to Commander Jeffrey Barter, who invited us, by the way. And
Yes.
he's a lovely guy.
So if you would
We've
like
been
to
to
come,
West Point as well.
Yes,
West Point.
Valley Forge as well.
Valley Forge tomorrow.
if you'd like to come out and meet the authors, and man, I mean, it's all in here, and you should feel this book. It's so heavy. It's a beautiful book. It's called Voices of the Bulge, Untold Stories from Veterans of the Battle of the Bulge. Find out why Martin has that poppy on your lapel. I'm sure it's all in this book. Thank you for joining us
All right,
both
thank you
today.
so much
Okay.
for inviting us.
Steve, over to you.
From the 12th of December, they'd ordered a radio silence. So there were going to be no messages transmitted between battalions, between divisions. Everything was going to be done by runners, people handing messages to each other. So for 3 days before the battle, they'd maintained total radio silence, and nobody had an inkling.
In the early hours of December the 16th, the Germans attacked. A 48-hour barrage of artillery erupted with devastating power. And with a front row seat, the forward observers of the 333rd Field Artillery Battalion. While the Americans tried to grasp the scale of the situation, specialist SS units disguised as GIs went behind the lines and attacked. Soldiers, just out of training camp, who'd never heard a shot fired in anger, suddenly didn't know friend from foe. Panic and paranoia ripped through the lines, but this was just the beginning.
The 333rd found themselves in the path of the 1st Division SS, Leibstandarte Adolf Hitler. These were the standard bearers of Adolf Hitler. So I think it's fair to say that these lads were pretty radical. They'd actually been given an agenda before they set off. They'd been told to subjugate your enemy by whatever means. That meant no holds barred. You did what you thought fit. They were going to write the battle by their rules in the field.
Now the two main panzer armies descended. The 106th, with no combat experience and 5 days in the area, received orders to counterattack. They faced Joachim Peiper and SS troops hardened by years on the Russian front. They were outnumbered 10-1.
Against these four divisions, at most some 80,000 men, Hitler had amassed over 400,000 men, and some of them are the best troops available with the newest equipment, the best tanks in line.
The divisions who were here in the supposedly quiet Ardennes were actually covering wider ground than they should have been, because according to the US Service Manual issued in World War II, a division front was 5 miles. Well, in the case of the 106th Division, which incorporated the 333rd, they were covering an area of over 26 miles, so they were far too thinly spread for a start.
It was a short-lived resistance. 2 of the division's 3 regiments gave up immediately. It was the biggest American surrender of the war, with over 6,000 men falling into German hands at once. With the 106th in disarray, it was time for the 333rd to get out, while leaving a small unit to give covering fire. This meant a tough decision.
These are the voices of those who experienced the biggest land battle in American military history, the Battle of the Bulge. It was the coldest winter in living memory, December 1944, when 3 German armies attacked a thinly held US line that went through the Ardennes region of Belgium.
Il y avait une neige épouvantable et un brouillard à couper le couteau.
Und niedrige Wolkendecke, was für uns sehr zum Vorteil war.
We were not prepared for winter fighting.
That's right.
The Germans were.
My full name is Francis S. Curry, and I served with Company K, 120th Infantry Regiment, and 30th Infantry Division.
Francis Curry is the last surviving Medal of Honor recipient who fought in that huge battle.
The reason they weren't getting it, because we weren't taking any prisoners.
My name is Theodore James Paluch, 285th Field Artillery Observation Battalion.
Ted Paluch is the last survivor of the infamous Malmedy Massacre.
They put us in a field, and then every tank and half track that came around, I think there was something 96 of them, came around firing into the group.
Hans Baumann, a former SS man, has another opinion.
Und ich kann mir nicht vorstellen, dass der einen Befehl gegeben hat, Kriegsgefangene zu erschießen.
We were surrounded. Where were we going to put prisoners? And so many times they were killed.
In the combat zone, there were no holidays. Death does not take a holiday.
So this is the British trenches over here.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't look like any protection at all.
No, there wouldn't have been a great deal of protection, bearing in mind that the walls would have been sandbagged.
In the trenches, just 5 feet deep, dug in a hurry with little or no bracing, soldiers faced horrific weapons no one had seen before, like artillery shells that turned trenches into craters. Any soldier who stuck his head up was also within range of a ferociously efficient new weapon, the machine gun. An American invention, it could spit out ammo 30 times faster than a rifleman. And then there were the clouds of poison gas that could drift across at any time. In this nightmarish landscape, there was only one safe place for miles around.
Oh, it's tunnel.
This is called a sap tunnel.
Wow, what's this?
This takes you out into no man's land.
Endless. This thing is just all underneath. It's lacing itself underneath the whole battlefield.
Tunnels like these, some of the only concrete structures in the Allied trenches, stretched at least 30 yards into the deadly area between the two sides, known as no man's land. The tunnels were used to spy on the Germans and as temporary refuge for the lucky few who were able to get in when the shelling started.
You figure, I mean, 50 yards away, the German forces are dug in on higher ground. All right, so the Allies down here, the British, Canadians, all the rest, have to use any measure possible to try to get some advantage. So they dig these tunnels, reconnaissance tunnels, so maybe they can go out further than their own trenches, get some kind of information, listening, visuals, whatever, to try to get some advantage.
While the Allies used these tunnels to spy and plan attacks, the Germans had a different approach, outlasting and bleeding the enemy dry. The key to their strategy also lay in the underground. Martin took me to see the subterranean structure used to protect German soldiers, and may have even saved young Adolf Hitler's life.
This is where Adolf Hitler first served in the war.
Hitler first served here in 1914 with the Bavarian regiment that he joined just a few months previous.
So he was running down in these trenches?
Absolutely.
Incredible. What was his job?
Well, that was his job, to run up and down the trenches, in fact.
Really?
He was a trench runner, a messenger.
Ah, let's see. So he was carrying orders from the front line to the rear and so forth?
Absolutely, that would have been his job.
In the midst of the horror and mayhem of the trenches, young Adolf found what he believed was his true calling.
Well, this is exactly what he needed. He'd been very unsuccessful in virtually every venture that he'd undertaken, so he was a bit of a loser.
Yeah.
Until along comes August 1914 in the von Schlieffen plan, and this is where we go, lads.
Okay.
You know, join the army.
He gets a true identity.
Absolutely, he finds an identity.
Right in these trenches.
In these trenches.
So these guys are sitting for years, a football field apart.
Absolutely.
Bombing each other.
Well.
And all these trees are gone.
Yeah.
These are mounds of mud that have been exploded by bombs.
Absolutely. In fact, there's some very famous photographs of Germans standing in these trenches, holding rats this size.
No way. Because there's dead bodies all over the place.
Precisely. The smell would have been absolutely horrendous.
For both the Allies and the Germans, daily life in the trenches was filled with filth and misery. But the Germans had a key advantage: subterranean bunkers, the forerunners of the infamous Nazi bunkers of World War II that could survive a direct hit from a one-ton bomb.
This is a classic German frontline bunker, reinforced concrete. Look at this.
Oh, yeah.
This concrete's got metal.
Sure, all through there. So this thing has stood up to many a bombardment.
It's pretty sturdy, absolutely. You'd be pretty safe in here.
Is this the actual floor? I mean, it was only this high?
This is as high as it would have been. And in a sustained barrage, I mean, a barrage could go on for a few days in some cases.
So this was a shelter they actually built for bombardments?
Absolutely, specifically for that purpose.
So how many men did they expect to get in this room?
So between 47 and 50 men.
47 men in this little tiny room?
In this tiny room, yeah.
No way.
And this is the only safe place in the trench. Out there is instant death.
Sure.
So here you're protected, you've got a few feet of reinforced concrete above your head.
In tiny rooms like this, Adolf Hitler gained a captive audience for his fiery propaganda.
If he would have walked into this bunker or crawled into this bunker, he's got 40-plus guys sitting here. So listen to this, lads. I've just been back to Berlin, and you know, and there he would have his rant, and he would start preaching it
about the things
politics,
we know.
Basically, politics.
Hitler's constant companion and only friend during the war was a dog who kept away rats. From this moment on, Hitler was never without a dog. His beloved German shepherd Blondie was with him in the Berlin bunker when he committed suicide 30 years later. Even though some estimate his unit lost over 2/3 of its men in the first few weeks of the war, Hitler miraculously survived 4 years on the Western Front.
He really did think he was a person with a purpose and a vision and a place in the world, you know, and he believed strongly of his in destiny and fate.
4 years in the trenches, dodging the horrors of modern killing machines, drove Hitler deeper and deeper into a mad, unquenchable hatred for his enemies, while 2 mighty armies dug down into the underground, looking for a way to end the bloodiest standoff in history. Coming up, an attack from 150 feet.
Het Amerikaanse leger heeft hulde gebracht aan de 94-jarige Augusta Chewy. In de Tweede Wereldoorlog was zij verpleegster en heeft het leven van tientallen soldaten gered tijdens de slag om de Ardennen in 1944. Saskia de Schutter.
Augusta Chewy krijgt de medaille voor humanitaire burgerverdiensten. In 1944 was ze net afgestudeerd als verpleegster toen ze naar Bastogne trok om gewonde Amerikaanse soldaten te verzorgen.
Chose à palper, chose à voir ce qu'il y a. Et je faisais les pansements comme vous avez appris. Hein. Et alors, même après, les choses plus importantes, comme deuxième hémorragie ou des histoires pareilles. Alors, je me suis pris là et j'étais tout étonné que je savais tout faire. Hein. Mais c'était normal, je te dis.
De slag om de Ardennen duurde goed een maand en hij was een van de meest gruwelijke veldslagen van de Tweede Wereldoorlog. Het Amerikaans leger verloor meer dan 10.000 soldaten. Wat Chewy deed onder die omstandigheden was uitzonderlijk.
Ze heeft vrijwillig aangemeld bij het Amerikaanse leger om te proberen om iets te kunnen doen aan de situatie. Dus dat was in Bastogne, dat was omsingeld door Duitsers. Dat was de koudste winter ooit opgenomen. En dat was min 28.
She helped out an American doctor by the name of Jack Pryor, and she not only treated soldiers in the hospital that was there, she also went out to the front lines to evacuate wounded soldiers and bring them back. And she was actually in a hospital that suffered a bomb attack that killed her close friend, nurse Renée Lemaire.
De erkenning voor haar heldendaden komt erg laat, maar Augusta Chewy koos zelf voor de anonimiteit en ze blijft er erg nuchter onder. Bien, donc, vous avez sauvé la vie?
Eh bien, moi, dans ma tête, c'est une vingtaine. C'est juste?
Je sais pas.
Ah ben voilà.
Are you keeping it real?
Fuck, can we do that again? Sorry. I fucked that. Sorry.
That's all right.